Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. Thank you for tuning in to my conversations at the intersection of arts, culture, and community. Today, I'm super excited to be spotlighting a cornerstone of cinematic storytelling in the nation's capital. The mastermind behind Filmfest DC, which is the district's premier international film festival. My guest is here to share the essence of this year's festival, a bit about the history, and his journey. We're celebrating a rich tapestry of global and local narratives. This festival has become a beacon for film enthusiasts, drawing together a community united by the love of the transformative power of storytelling. Each selection is curated for its artistic excellence, promises to transport, enlighten, and entertain, fostering a deep connection amongst attendees through the universal language of film. With a legacy built upon the passions of vibrant energy supplied by diverse audiences, Filmfest DC continues to be a festival of stories, celebrating the art that reflects our lives and shapes our perspectives. I am honored to welcome my next guest, the cinematic visionary, Tony Gittens. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, Tony. And before we get started, I want to give you the space to tell us a little bit about yourself as we open up this podcast. Like, where are you from? You know, what is your story? What's the early touch points within your story?
Yeah, so I born and raised in Brooklyn. My sister and my parents come from Barbados. So I feel like I'm a Caribbean American. And decided I was going to get out of Brooklyn and came to Howard and liked it. Well, I liked Washington. Howard had its moments, but I like DC. And my friends, after a while, your friends are here and you feel comfortable and familiar with it. And I was able to find enough work to pay my rent. So it was fine. I didn't have any kids, none of that. So I got to really like the place. I got to like DC.
So what was it like starting off? Because I'm at this sort of stage where you're looking for a place. Like my partner, she's from Brooklyn, so she's gonna love that. She's
okay. But you got to be a good person there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
But I do these interviews. I do stuff as we were talking a little bit. Before getting started in earnest, that I'll do interviews in DC. I've been doing some in New York and some in Detroit and just different cities. Mm-hmm. And it's always something that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the thing that I like in my city, in Baltimore, that I'm looking for that thing, but in those other cities. I'm trying to find a version of it. So for you, having New York is New York, having sort of that, and then coming down here to DC. What was it about DC that hooked you and ultimately keeps you there?
One was the Black middle class that was here. And I only in hindsight do I sort of recognize that. But it was, my parents were working class. My mother was a maid. My father was a mechanic. And to come here and see so many African Americans who were middle class with jobs primarily in the government, and the government offered them financial security and some safety and making it work. The other thing was that that DC was manageable to me after being raised and having to make my way in Brooklyn. That coming here was not that tough. I mean, to do a simple thing in New York, you had to put aside a day to make sure that that you filled out all the forms and got on the right train to get where. It was always crowded. Downtown was crowded. I looked out my window where we lived, and there were always people walking about. I came to DC, and there wasn't that. And so I felt it was manageable. I could handle this. I could handle this because it's not like it's as complicated and as averse. In other words, in DC, in New York, I always felt I had to fight my way through to get to something. Yeah. Whereas when I was in DC, I didn't have that feeling. So, there were other things, but when I think about it, those are the things that attracted me to DC.
That makes sense. And I have a trip coming soon to Manhattan, and this will be the third year in a row I've gone up there for this particular trip, and I avoid the train for that. It's like, this is the hassle to get to. Can I take an Uber? Can I walk it? And I mean, look.
I have a grandson, and they lived in Queens. My son and his wife and Nico, our grandson, and he knows. We'll go. Well, my wife and I go and spend like the day with him and stuff. He knows how to get on the subway to get. No, don't take the 5 train. If you take the 1 train and get off of to him, he just handled it. He's just handled it. He's not threatened by it at all. So I guess if you get used to your environment, it's okay.
100%, 100%. Yeah. So as I look over, your background, and I see like things that, one, obviously it's a visionary, it's a legendary background, but I also see the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities, and then the International Film Festival, which 38th year?
38th year.
I mean, look, I'm 39, so I mean,
you were 1 year old when we started, huh?
I mean, look, but so could you speak a bit on some of the experiences that led to this trajectory of being around in sort of let me step back. How do you look at having that background that's related to the arts and arts administrative and sort of like building out this creative community in DC? What were some of the experiences and visions that helped kind of shape that?
Well, one, in Brooklyn, my father, as I mentioned, was from Barbados, and he was a musician. He played calypso, and this was the time before record players and iPods and all those other things. So if you wanted to have a party and you wanted to have music, you hired, a 3-piece band to come and play in your living room while people danced. Otherwise, you just couldn't do it. So he made his living doing that. Primarily before my sister and I were born. And then when we came along, he had to find what he called a rail job, working for the subway system in New York. But the fact that he was a musician allowed me to hear him rehearse. And most importantly, I heard him and watched him perform. He was always the leader of the band or the orchestra. And so he did it with confidence and capability. So I always watched him, one, create art, create music, and 2, become a leader in presenting it. So it took me a while to figure this out. But him, my father as a model, I felt comfortable doing it because I saw him do it. And the music, the art, the drawing, I'm not a painter or anything like that. So then my time in the civil rights movement, and that was a period, that whole period, not only for we in the movement, but also for young people, baby boomers, we're now called. It was a very free time to experiment and to not be caught up in social concepts that challenging so many things that you wound up experiencing a variety of things. So one of the things that I knew I didn't want was a 9-to-5 job. I wanted it because when I got out of high school, I had to do something, and so I was a bank teller. This is more than you want to know about my life. Oh. But anyway, so I was a bank teller, and that taught me something about discipline, because as a bank teller, you're dealing with numbers, and numbers don't lie. It always had to add up at the end, close out at the end. And I wasn't very good at it at the beginning, but as time went on, and I had people around me who were very supportive, especially the manager of the bank at that time. He understood I was a young man. And so I sort of enjoyed management because it made the numbers, and the numbers had to balance out all the time. And that was kind of a safety net. I didn't have to think about and be creative and too much about it. The numbers were all I had to deal with. So then when I got there and I got into the movement and at Howard, and I was a young student like so many other young students, and was interested in this iconoclastic world, this free world and culture that was coming into the country at the time. I was able to take the musical interest and combine it with the administrative kind of interest and comfort. I was comfortable in that, and spend my life bouncing from one to the other and occasionally finding a place where they joined, and was happy doing what I was doing most of the time. In a nutshell.
It's great when you have those intersections where it's just like, I'm interested in this. I see sort of this creative, I see sort of the social justice component and the civil rights component, because I see, eyes on the prize as well in the background and on here. And, when we're able to do that, it feels rewarding, and it kind of enables us to maybe affect change. And when we get those like sort of leadership opportunities and those spots, when I do these interviews, I interview a lot of different people, but the perspective is very much someone who looks like me. and that's baked into what I do. And even the folks that I reach out to and get really excited to do interviews with. And so I don't know, it's just great when those points kind of intersect.
Yeah. It is. When it all comes together, that it feels good. And people, it's good if we try to make the effort to make that happen, to not sort of get stuck in some situation. I want to call it a job, but in a situation where you have to get up in the morning and you're not happy. You don't feel you're creating, contributing in some way. And when you have that, as you say, where it does all intersect, then it makes for, you can make a decent, pleasant life out of it.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It's challenging. I mean, there's always, because if you're not on following the path, you're creating your own path there, where you can expect challenges and problems and failure, and be able to bounce from that and figure out what you have to do, and how training, how to do something that you don't know how to do, and you got to learn how to do it. And if you want to really make a big impact, then you have to be willing to make decisions and be wrong some of the time, and say, okay, I was wrong. I was wrong.
That's the thing. It's a really interesting point there, where, and I've been comparing, like, I talk about like the reps when folks are doing something creative or something that is a new thing. It should be more challenging, should be more interesting. There should be instances where you fail, where you didn't complete it, and you should be able to learn something from those. And I think it's very similar to when someone is like doing something fitness oriented, of I'm running, I could run 10 minutes. All right, cool. Yesterday it was 8 minutes. And, you're able to progress and get better, but eventually, it's going to work out in a way. And when I look at some of the interviews, I've been podcasting for 15 years, so not 38, but 15 years.
That's great. That's why. Congratulations.
Thank you. And sometimes I'll do an interview where it's like, this is great, this is going to work. Or even some of the folks that I reach out to, I'm like, how in the world did I get this guest? I am not qualified for this one. But it's progression. It's getting better, but there are challenges that present themselves in this story, where I maybe don't look the way, or I don't look like a podcaster, or you have this background. So for you in your journey, whether it be in sort of the around the arts and working within the arts, or specifically to the festival, what are some of the challenges that you faced, and what was the inspiration in actually starting the festival?
Someone told me years ago, he said, find what moves you and trust it. What moves, you can't often put it into words, but it moves you. People get moved by all kinds of things, and trust it and let that go to work. Let that go to work. And I found that to be true, that if that's, if something moves me, and you too, and any human being, I think. I'm not gonna make this personal because it's not. And you let it, you own up to it. It sort of takes you where to go. I mean, the civil rights movement, what used to get me is I really didn't like other people being mistreated. I didn't like watching. It was hard for me to watch or hear about other people being mistreated. And I wanted to stop that or help stop that in some way. And that's pretty simple. There's no ideology behind it or anything like that. It's just the way I felt about people and watching it. And it was just really just sort of got me in some place inside to watch that and just want to stop it. So then you wind up sort of being around other people who feel the same way and want to do it. You wind up doing things that don't make a whole lot of sense and you don't know how you're going to do it, but you feel you got to do it because it moves you to do it. The Arts Commission, I always wanted to help the artists. Yeah. That's what sort of got me, that how do you take the resources, in that case of the government, and get it out to creative people, artists, writers, podcasters, I guess, musicians, and how do you get it to them so that they can do what it is they do and not be always crushed by the financial situations that they find themselves in? And then to audiences, how do you when I used to say, how do you get these people walking around on the street and how do you sort of make it a better experience for them to do that? Yeah. Now that's a big question, but it begs all kinds of answers and imaginative ways and frustration and budgets and stuff. But, people who just sort of going through they're going to the post office, going to the grocery store, going in a restaurant, going down to the district building, going to the DMV. I didn't get the DMV. I wanted to get the DMV before I left, but I couldn't do it. But how do you sort of make that experience for them just better? Essentially make their life better. That's one of the incredible opportunity to be able to make other people's life better. Just, that to me just is an opportunity. It's not a job, that's not a job. That's an opportunity to do something in my life. Yeah.
That's one of the things when folks ask me what drives this, you do a lot of stuff and why do you do it? And it's like, I get to talk to people who are more talented than me and have them share their story with me in a way that they're most comfortable with. I would imagine, with a long and illustrious career as yours, where you get these, interviews and the person hasn't done any research or they're asking you sort of the canned questions. And it's just like, all right, cool. Some people go through the motions when that happens. But when someone is asking what was the thinking behind that or going to that next level, you're like, oh, I can really cut loose a little bit, let my hair down. Here's the actual answer, what I was thinking. Let me be petty for a minute. Let me do this for
Yeah, that's true. That's true, because I agree with you. If people, if somebody, most of around this time of my days, the questions are around the film festival, naturally. And that's why I'm here. And I'm here to let people know about the film festival and if they're interested to come by and see what it is we're doing. Yeah. So I have those answers. But, you're asking me more personal things, which I really, most of the time, hadn't thought about. And I'm sitting here, well, how do I connect that to the film festival? Because I don't want it to be about me, Now, you asked about how I got involved in the film festival. So that's a good way for me to segue into the film festival.
I try to craft it this way so we
You did it, my man. Yeah. You did a good job. The film festival came about. I mentioned I'd spent a little bit of time doing stuff in the movement, civil rights movement. So one of the things that we did is we had a bookstore, Drum and Spear bookstore, and I was the manager of the bookstore. Now, I never managed a bookstore in my life. I've been in the bookstore and I read books, but I bought books, but managing the bookstore. But what clicked in was my bank teller experience. And that really helped. That really helped me to formulate a foundation, a business foundation for the bookstore, financial foundation for it. So it was very good that I had those two things that intersected there that helped me out. But at the bookstore, we did it because we wanted to impart information. We wanted to give people information about Black and colored people around the world. And so every book we could find that had that theme was something that we would bring to the bookstore, and people would come who were interested in that came to the bookstore to get the information. But there weren't intellectuals would come, but people on the street and stuff, they weren't about reading a lot of books. So when I left the book Drum and Spear, and I was figuring out what I'm going to do next, my life got complicated. Then I said movies, because I've always watched movies. I watched movies when I was coming up as a kid. I watched a lot of television when I was coming up as a kid. So, I never made a movie, don't want to make a movie, but I liked and enjoyed movies. And they were a vehicle that a lot of people found very easy to watch and experience and come back with information. So I decided that I'm going to show movies. So I showed a lot of Black movies. And I created something out of nothing called the Black Film Institute. And we got movies. This was, again, a time before the internet, so they weren't as available as before. And we took them to prisons, and we took them to schools and to churches, and we ran series, seasonal series, brought in filmmakers from New York and California to talk to. After every film, there was always a conversation about what the film was about. Hopefully with the filmmaker, not always, maybe we'd have a scholar there. Sure. And with support, I was able to run that for a while. And then some friends and I got together and said, well, let's blow this up a bit. And we made it an international film festival. That's what happened 38 years ago. Well, actually, it happened 36 years ago. It took us 2 years to mount the first one. And then after we did the first one, we said, well, I guess we got to do the next and the next and the next. And that happened 38 times, because I think there's probably a point in every one of those 38 where I say, oh, God, I'm never going to do this again. This is the last one. Why did I, but then my friends laugh at me, they laugh at me and I wind up. Yeah. Yeah. But progression sort of went that way. Yeah. The people who come to the movies and go to the movie theater, they don't care one way or another. They just want to know whether they like the film or not. But that's okay. The pleasure of getting the film up in that screen, which is not always easy, and watching people seeing the film and enjoying it, knowing that if we didn't make the effort, they wouldn't have that experience, brings satisfaction.
That's great. Like I've worked with a number of film festivals over the last few years, and I really value watching. It's sort of like, you have like the international films, local films, and so on. But the idea of going to a place with a big screen always is alluring to me. When they have revival series and things of that nature, there are movies that I've seen hundreds of times, right? But going to a theater, seeing it in 35 millimeters, seeing it on a huge screen, it is a different experience.
Yes.
And having folks go out there, and to your point, it's like the sort of the almost a simple question of, did you like it? Did you have a good time? Did you enjoy it? And this past year, I've been involved from the film criticism side of it, and I listened to folks critique it. I was like, wow, I'm not as hard as they are. Like their commentary, they were running a festival would be very different. So in that, I want to get a sense on, with your background, you've mentioned the movement, you've mentioned sort of this focus and this interest in like basically helping folks like, get past some of these challenges. What are some of the commitments in the selection and in the programming for the festival, in the selection process for films and the programming for the festival?
Well, of course, it's always quality. And always, what do we think the audience wants to see? Which is not always what I want to see, but it's not for me, it's for the audience. What do they, and then new voices, films by countries and from countries and by filmmakers who are not a traditional place where you're going to find films, give these folks a new chance. And making sure that the infrastructure is solid and invisible in a way. People should be able to come in, buy their ticket, sit down, watch the movie, get up and leave without knowing all the rigmarole that it went into establishing that and maintaining it. So to keep that's important, because I've been to places where that was not the case, and it becomes a sloppy kind of experience. And so we don't do that. We don't do that. And to bring people together, you were mentioning that watching a film on your couch by yourself or with your partner or whatever's up there, is one experience. Going to a theater and having dozens of people sitting around you and sharing that experience with them and talking about many a time about the experience as you leave, that's a whole different, on a big screen, that's a whole different experience, which only movie theaters can offer. Movie theaters can offer that. Your couch, no matter how big your screen is in your house, is not going, unless you're going to invite, 15, 20 people to sit there with you, watching it in your living room. It's not going to have that experience. And that will always separate movie theaters, which are having a hard time. But always separate movie theaters from, they'll keep going,
It's definitely a communal experience. And, you're so right. Like when you watch, like I'm working on this series of revival films, Black films and all of that stuff, and working with a comedy and improv place to put that on. Mm-hmm. And something about like, I'm curating these films that I want to, get the rights for and all of that stuff, but curating these films and having this sort of like series. And the thing that I'm in my mind's eye that I'm so excited for is I wonder if they're going to find that part of that movie funny like I did. And
yeah, right.
that response is going to be, and have that shared thing. It's just something about it. You're right. It's hard to replicate, especially when the first time you see it or when you're revisiting a particular thing in a movie. It's just big. So I had this next question that I'm very curious about. This one, I saw it on the site. So it said it reads this quote: "Filmfest DC, a festival of stories," and I think that signifies the power of narratives in film. In your view, what makes it for a compelling story? That is compelling enough to be featured in the festival, and creating space for these stories to connect and impact with that audience.
Well, one of the reasons that, and what makes doing a festival attractive is that the content always changes every year, almost fully changes every year. There are films made all over the world, and a number of them will never be shown in the United States. So that gives us a reason to get up and do the work that we're doing. But I'm trying to think of an answer to your question. It's hard to put into words, because we argue. There are a little group of us who select the films, and we don't always agree on what should be there and what shouldn't be there. I mean, we have limited space. Sure. And it varies from person to person. Some people have an understanding of the history of the filmmaker. Well, she made this and he made this, and this is similar to the film they made in 1970. I don't have any of that. All right. And I don't. And other people like the politics of the films.
Sure.
They're interested in that a filmmaker is now dealing with a subject. We have a whole social justice section made up of these films. The environment, issues in Palestine, political issues with the election coming up, abortion, anti-abortion. There are those issues. And in a town like Washington, there are a lot of people who know a lot about these issues. And so they turn up because they want to see films about what it is that they're interested in. And they might not go to the thrillers or the comedies down the hall, because it's not. So, you're trying to please all these folks. And above all, you want them to be good films. You want them to be solid films by imaginative filmmakers, some who want to take some risks. We don't do too much with experimental on forms. In other words, experimental films. Our audience is not a big thing for them, not a big thing for me. So we don't do a lot of that. So it's pretty much straight ahead narrative films, but they have interesting characters facing interesting challenges. And one of the things that I've sort of found out by doing this, seeing enough films, is that no matter the cultures, that pretty much basically the stories are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
People want pretty much the same. They want some degree of freedom. They want to have some love in their life, families. They want to have wherewithal, in other words, some money so they can lead a comfortable life. And they want they don't want to be abused. You know, they don't want that. Some want more action and adventure than others. But pretty much, you know, you find when you look at enough films from around the world, the themes a lot of times sort of boil down to a handful that play a role in all of our lives. All of our lives, you know. It's hard for us. No, everybody doesn't want to accept that and agree because we feel we're different than other people. To some extent, we are. A lot of extent, it depends. But that's what I've seen. You know, the stories, a lot of them tend to be the same.
Yeah, because when we have adaptations and things of that nature, it's just like, well, the root of this story is the same. And you go back and look at like maybe, let's say movies from like 20 years ago, what have you, and you're like, all right, what were the influences that went into this movie? And it's like, oh, this is a movie from the 30s. It's like, yeah, this movie is exactly the same. You just updated it for contemporary times or based in this setting or this audience. And I like to do that thing of watching the movie that I like. Let's say it might be Kill Bill or something in that vein. And I'm like, all right, what were the influences that went in there? And then I go through and look through. It's like, oh, you took that shot from here, or this character's name for this person. And, you know, those are in different languages. Those are at different times with different people that we have never met. And you're like, wow, I see it. I get it.
Yeah. But, you know, people, you know, we make up stories about our life. You know, we have an internal dialogue that continually makes up the story of our life. And we make up the story of, and those stories give us a history, to give us an association with other things and other people. But they're just stories. They're things that we've made up. You know, interpretations of our experiences that we think are true.
Yeah.
And so the festival, every single one of those films, from short to, has a story. And we are a festival of stories, you know, that happen to be made by filmmakers, and we place them up on a screen for you to see. And that's what we do, you know, in its simplest form, you know. Yeah, we're a festival of stories, and people can talk about how they came up with the stories, the meaning of it.
So I want to throw out some numbers real quick. I'm back on the, you know, Filmfest DC.Org site, and I see these numbers, which is mind-boggling a little bit. So, you know, 62 films from 36 countries over the course of 11 days, and, you know, obviously one amazing film festival.
Of course.
What is that? Because you're saying like this is the very busy part where, you know, folks are reaching out for these interviews to talk about the festival. Talk a bit about sort of like what that timeline is like when you're planning out the 39th version, right? When does that clock start?
It'll be the same. We go out to see films as soon as the festival is over. You want to know the process of creating the film festival? Is that it? So after this festival, after we got to clean up. My son used to go to Montessori school, and they taught them that cleaning up was part of the project. So we clean up, you know, with spotless, pay all the bills, clear out the movie theaters, have our wrap-up meetings, doing all that, and it's clean. Then we have to go find the films. So we go to the Cannes Film Festival, and those are the new films that are coming out in the spring and the summer and probably into the early fall. And we go there, and they're the films, but they're also the people. That's where the distributors are, the people from whom we have to get the films. We get an opportunity to meet with them, for them to tell us what it is that is coming up. And people have this image of Cannes, understandably, of the red carpet and the gowns and all that stuff. No. There's a whole, right next to the same theater where the red carpet is this big building called the Palais, and it's like a convention center. We're there, the festival and the films are there for couple of weeks. The next people who come in could be the telephone people. And after that could be vacuum cleaner franchise. It's nothing fancy about it. That's where we go. That's where we do the work, and it is work because you can watch. I'm going to see at least 5 films a day. And so you got to move and get there and get online and all that other stuff and maneuver your schedule. So we do that. Then we come back and we start we have to raise money because it takes money we got to rent the theaters. It's not free. We have to rent the films. They're not free. There's my core staff of 3 people. We have bring in other people, part-timers when we get closer to the festival, build out the website, write the notes for the films, make the technical arrangements for the films. We bring in these people from around the country, so we work and do that. Then in September is the Toronto Film Festival. So we get ourselves together and get our little hotel. Anyway, so we go to the hotels and then we go to deal with that and work that festival. What's up? What's new? You see friends, you see distributors. You got to go there to be there. You got to see the films. And that's about a week and it's pretty intense. You're pretty worn out, but you see people running around all over the time down there because you got to move. You got to stay in the move. And there are thousands of people you got to maneuver yourself through. So you do that. So it's September. No, but we're still writing applications, to the district government, the federal government, foundations. Everybody's doing that, trying to get money to do it. I mean, there's no glamour in any of this. At least we got some heat in our office now. There were a number of years where we didn't have any heat in the office. So we got some heat in the office. And so we're churning it out. And by September, October, November, December, then we start. The last festival we go to is January of the last year. So you can see this goes on. This is a trek, man. This is trains going down a track, and we hit the Palm Springs Film Festival. Why Palm Springs? But they ain't nothing happening in Palm Springs. I can tell you that. But their audience is very similar to our audience, and so and they show a lot of the Academy Award foreign films. So we go there. And we work that festival. And then we go by January, we got to have things pretty much set. We got to know we got enough money. We got the theater set. So-and-so is going to be going to handle the technical stuff. Somebody else will handle hospitality. We got to have all that logistical stuff done. We might have one meeting at the beginning of the year with the team to talk about stuff. So the PR people, is Travis there? We got that kind. We got to do all that, and then we start working on the catalog. And Shireen, who's the deputy, she takes charge of the catalog, and that's gathering the notes and the photos and laying it out. And she has Jill who helps her with that, and then another design. And then we start, and then at some point you get to the point where we are now, where you put out that first list of films. Yeah. You get opening night together for that first list, and then you start selling tickets and seeing how that's going to go, and make sure everything is ready when you start for opening night in the following days. And you get hope. You hope. I always hope somebody shows up. I swear, I dream that we're going to do it, and nobody's going to be there. Because you never know. You just never know. I've failed many a time at doing these kinds of events. Nobody's there. You learn from them not to do what you did last time, and then you do the festival, and you every day there's some problem, and there's always some joy, some surprise there. People come, and you see that, and you say, "Well, it's all worth it." And then you go through it, and then you start all over again the next year, while you're doing other things. You got other projects in your life, maybe family, and you're doing other things. You're not just doing that, and fills up your day. Yeah, fills up your day.
I think that hits, and it's for that 11-day period, and we got the April 18th to the 28th. So
yes,
that's you gave the full calendar with those touch points. We're going to this festival. We're out here. We're in this other country for this festival. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. Right. You've learned how to eat on the move. There's not a lot of sitting around and having meals. A couple of times you have dinner, just talk about things, catch up. But I mean, it is work. It is work. Now, it's not bad work. I'm not trying to be dishonest. There's enjoyment in a lot of these things. The people around the film festival world tend to be, they tend to be smart people and not too many. There are some a-holes around, but you stay away from them and you do the best you can and try to survive. There are like a couple of thousand. Somebody told me there were like 4,000 film festivals around the world.
Wow.
There are a lot of film festivals. And because it works, it's something that works. We were the first in Washington. In the Washington area, we were the first film festival. And now, I don't know, there are about 15 of them. I get emails about different films, which is fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. But it's it's almost time to get out, right? The one thing that I found, I discovered two things this year. First thing is that there is a plethora. There are a lot more local films being made than even last year, the year before. Like we have a section called DC for Real, where we show films by DC filmmakers, and we also do something Filmfest DC on TV, where we put those films on WHUT, the Howard station, and WETA, the PBS station, NPR station in DC. So we give them exposure, a lot of exposure, and the films are good. Yeah. It was kind of hard this year to go through them and find the right ones because there were so many that good. And I think that's because COVID, people are coming out of COVID and they're ready to go to work. And the other thing that I'm saying this now with some wood to knock on, that our attendance is going up. Our attendance is going up. Last year, it was very good. And this year already, I mean, we've sold over 3,000 tickets in a weekend and more around the way. We get about 10,000 people, between 9 and 10,000 people. But this is speeding along. And I think part of it is, but everyone was afraid of the streamers, of Netflix and Apple TV and all those things, saying, oh, they're going to show all the movies and people will stay home and watch the movies and they won't go out to the movies in the theater and they won't go out to film festivals. Well, I think with the case of film festivals, so this is Tony's theory, is that the streamers are wearing people out with a lot of junk. And I've heard a number of times from my friends saying, I got Netflix, there's nothing on there. I got this and there's nothing on there. They have these series that are really mediocre. And I think people are tired of that. That the streamers have created their own style. There's a word for it that's not coming to mind now. But what that's allowed is that people who are serious and want to see good films, they come to film festivals because you're not going to find that on the streamers. What we show, 80%, 75%, whatever. If you don't see it with us now, it's going to be hard for you to see it otherwise. Right. And I think people who are looking for it's the same kind of thing. People who are looking for quality food, people who want to eat at McDonald's every day, can't do nothing for them. But people who want a fine meal and enjoy good beverages, they're willing to make the effort to go to get to the quality. And we are the quality. We're the quality. We're the anti-streamer stuff that people want to see and they appreciate it. And what's caused them to appreciate it is they spend a whole year watching the stuff on Netflix and say, "Oh God, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore."
You're so right. I agree with your theory, and because you're right. When you have like folks that are working and being thoughtful and attentive and actually applying taste, and as you said, you've keyed in on quality, and as a person that has all the platforms. It's absolutely, it's a lot of junk here. It's a lot of money being spent, but it's a lot of junk. And I will find the Criterion channel. I'll find these obscure little things to watch something that is interesting because I'm going to like the things that I like. And it's the stuff that might be a little schlocky. It might be horror movies, it might be action movies. I can
Yeah.
always watch that. I can always go into that. But if I want to see a film that I haven't seen, I'm not going to be going to that Netflix. That's not my first choice. I'm going to be
Yeah.
going somewhere that has quality, taste, curation, much like a film festival. And so that's sort of, I want to close out there on the real questions. I do have 2 rapid fire questions I got to ask you before we wrap up. So the way this rapid fire thing works, whatever the first thing that comes to mind, so the first question I got for you is, what is your favorite type of movie? Like style? Are you big into drama, comedy?
Thrillers, I could tell you, thrillers.
Okay.
Thrillers, something that has, and it doesn't have to be people running around shooting each other, but it could be a good detective or mystery story. Who done it? And a smart one. A smart film.
Yeah, I love that. This is the sort of the last one I got. Because as we started off with with your background being in from Brooklyn, what have you, and then you have the DC. Is there in your travels for like film festivals or just in your journey, right? Is there a city that you've spent time in that has like left an impression on you creatively? Like, wow, I really like this festival and the city was really cool, or what have you. Is there any city that comes to mind?
There are a couple. One is Hanoi, Vietnam. The other is I want to say Shanghai, but Hanoi, Vietnam is a place I would go back to. Vietnam is a fascinating place. So if I had to pick one, that would be the place.
That's it. You're off the hot seat. Thank you for indulging me in that last bit.
No. No, it's fine. It's fine. I do the same thing when we interview filmmakers, and I have my question is to them is, what did you want to leave the audience with your film? And sometimes I'm surprised they never thought about it.
Yeah.
They take time to think. I would think that would be. But no, that's the same thing. I know what you mean.
I mean, when I sometimes I get in the weeds with it because it's about the cultural component. Like I know, my partner and I when we go to film festivals or movies or anything along those lines, it's a specific snack. She was like, "Look, I'm gonna need these peanut M&Ms and this popcorn. This is what I do." I asked people, I was like, "Look, what's your snack thing for a movie?"
Yeah.
So, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, man.
I want to give you, if you have any like final thoughts that you want to share or anything, as far as tell folks to come out, website, and all that stuff. The floor is yours. Please share your final thoughts.
Well, I want to invite people to visit our website, filmfest.DC.org, filmfestdc.org. All the information about the festival is on the website. The festival runs April 18th through the 28th. We love to see new folks, young folks come out. It's a good time. It's an interesting time, and we have a lot of comedies, and we have just great films from all over the world.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Tony Gittens from Filmfest DC for coming on and regaling us with a bit of the history of the festival and sharing a bit of his journey and getting us amped up for the 2024 installment of Filmfest DC. That is April 18th through the 28th. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.